Summer Moon Utah Wells was reported missing June 15th, 2021 around 6:30 p.m. from the 100 block of Ben Hill Road in the Beech Creek community of Hawkins County, Tennessee. She, at the time of her disappearance, had shaved blonde hair, blue eyes, is a white female, was possibly barefoot, weighing about 40 pounds, and was reported as 3 feet tall. She is very thin and with her shaved head could have easily been mistaken for a boy. The circumstances leading up to Summer's disappearance remain unclear, and anyone with any tips is urged to call 1-800 TBI FIND immediately. Visit the TBI newsroom for facts on the Summer Wells case and to check for updates. Consider hanging flyers in your town. We must keep Summer's name and face out to the public and watch for her regularly. She could be anywhere. There are people from all over the world looking for Summer Moon Utah Wells, and we pray every day to find her safely. Let's get into someone close to Summer's case who I find suspicious because he inserted himself and has made these journey videos and has done other shady things like keeping Don Wells' phone instead of turning it into authorities, as it could have potentially have evidence on it, and writing Summer Cells on Facebook and admitting he realized it and still didn't change it, which he admitted was because he didn't want the backlash, allegedly. Now, this is all in my opinion, okay? Also, I find it very suspicious that Tim allegedly was taking photos of Summer in church. I'm not an expert on Tim Mullen. I don't know the guy, never met him. I don't want to meet him in person. I would love to email him and get an answer to the church filming problem. Did he film Summer in church, or did he steal the work by putting his watermark on it? Why would he do this and not explain himself, or did I just miss that? I am trying to figure out if Tim Mullen classifies as suspicious in regards to the disappearance of Summer Moon Utah Wells in any way, be it having possession of her at any point or having anything else to do with her disappearance or guilty knowledge of it. Tim starts off Journey Video 7 showing a bunch of flies flying above the grass for like 2 seconds and saying, "Little critters." And then he says he needs to make this one shorter. The last one was so long because he didn't realize how much he actually had to talk about from the prayer vigil, he explains. He says this is the green belt of Kingsport. He shows the sign for the green belt path, says it goes from one end of Kingsport to the other. It is a beautiful trail, like a bike trail. I think it would be a place I could see myself spending a lot of time if I lived around there, which I would love. He continues down the path, says it's about 10 miles long. What's neat is it was just built plain from scratch, he says that it is pretty neat for a city to do something like that. He says you should see this in the springtime. Many times throughout his journey videos, he says that. He says he hasn't had time to think about any of this because things just keep unfolding and happening. Yet, he is documenting his journey, so he isn't doing a thorough job as documenting his journey for the family or for being a media manager when he cannot even tell a story without saying he can't remember how it went. Or he could have went into the Summer Wells case for a different reason than he is leading on, which in my opinion is to help the family have a place to safely go online to post about their daughter, and he can own it and run it and get all the credit for it, and it's a win-win. That's kind of what he's leading on, in my opinion. And if that's the case, shame on you, Tim, because you could be damaging the case. But he says he had the idea for the website in the way back of his mind. Obviously, it wasn't that far back. He came up with it before he even says he met Don or Candace. Maybe he really is in this for some other nefarious reason that we can't figure out, and that's why a lot of this isn't making sense to me. For example, he says he is making this for the boys and the family, yet he is mentioning his beef with McDonough, rotting carcasses, boring layers of rock for half an hour straight as a visual for one video, and the same trees and paths for others, with a couple cool things that he shows like the clock tower and the mansion. Hardly any footage of Summer. Not much talk of Summer or her information, ever. Is he really making this for the family? Or is he just a fake trying to use Summer as a way to make his business boom, and he isn't going to admit that, but he tried to have a cover story and we're all tearing it apart, so he stays mostly silent, because then he doesn't have to be proven wrong and come up with reasons and answers. Anyways, back to the video. He says the prayer vigil was where he met Candace. He can't remember if he actually introduced himself. Points out how the trail is still flooded from the other day. He said the first time he saw Candace was at the parade. Then he actually met with her face to face at the prayer vigil. He clarifies it so that it's clear, he says. He may have photographed Candace before in the background walking by in an event or something. He says they could have been walking around at festivities in Kingsport. She has been to the 1800s exchange place, and Kingsport has a lot of stuff. I think Kingsport sounds like a blast, but not because of Tim. So just in case it comes out that Tim was filming at any festivities and Candace and her children are in some footage, he can go back and say, I told you so, basically. I wonder if that pertains to church as well. Then he says, the shadow knows, and shows his shadow pointing at his shadow self. He goes on to talk about how social media twists things that people say and turns it into something that is nothing, like what was said in the first place. He ties that in, interestingly enough, with how there is no war between Chris McDonough and himself.
Like I said, never taking pictures.
This is from Tim Mullen's media manager page.
Taking some shots in Kingsport at some festive. They happened to walk through the picture and I didn't know it. I wanted to make sure that was clear. If I said I'd never taken their picture, then say, well, how do you know? So I wanted to clarify it so it was clear. Yes, there's a chance. Who knows? Because Candace has told me she's been to the exchange place. I think, yeah, the exchange place. We'll go there sometime. 1850s farm.
So he's talking about this exchange place, this 1850s farm, which actually sounds really cool to me. But he's saying that Candace goes to these places. So there's a lot of places in Kingsport where, you know, she would talk about taking her kids, like there's the swimming hole and stuff like that. But there's so much other stuff in Kingsport. And if Candace really did take the kids to do stuff all the time, then what he's saying is there's a chance that he may have been photographing somewhere like at like another parade or any festivities going on in Kingsport, and her children may have been there, and he may have been photographing just random photos, and they may have been in some of them. So if it comes out later, anything like that anywhere around there, like in church, then what he's gonna say is, I told you so. I told you I may have done that.
Other things in Kingsport, because Kingsport just has a lot of neat stuff. The shadow knows. And
did anybody notice that? How he says, the shadow knows, and just randomly points at himself? If I was somebody walking by, I'd be like...
So that was that. Well, then, between that prayer vigil, July 27, and the next prayer vigil.
So he's saying the first prayer vigil was on July 27th.
They put out a little
and then the second prayer vigil would have been a week later, I believe. I could be wrong on that.
3rd.
August 3rd.
A bunch of things were kind of clicking and happening and doing the website.
That's right. I knew that. I forgot.
The pictures, the things that were going on.
I was feeling on the spot.
Going on. The previous.
D, oh my gosh, you're in my chat. I love you, girl. Hi.
Interviews had been analyzed, I think, by then. I know that Don wasn't happy at all. He got real upset once everything was being told on those, because the interviews herself.
So Don was getting really upset on everything that was being told on Chris McDonough's interviews, which obviously we all knew that. We all knew that he was going to be upset about that.
Those 2 interviews at their home and at the lake, I thought they were great. I really did. I liked them.
Can you hear okay when I'm playing the video clips of Tim?
That's why they were posted, because they just gave you a nice view. It was within the analysis of
those interviews did give you a nice view of inside the home, which I think is important for us as a community to see. And I think it's important for the family to be completely transparent about everything that they do, because we're trying to get to the bottom of where their daughter is. And they've admitted openly that they were getting messed up and they weren't passing drug tests. So I'm pretty sure that, it'd be safe to say that they're obviously not going to want somebody in their home and to see their private life. But at the same time, they should know we're not judging them for that. We're just trying to help find Summer Moon Utah Wells.
interviews, which might have been right afterwards. I can't remember. I haven't gone back and watched them for a while. But it was all about the exact same time, and it all had to do with those interviews. Is the part that I'd mentioned the other day on the whichever video 3, video 4. So I wanted to clarify that.
So this text says Candace hates him now, and it's talking about Chris McDonough. And Tim says, tell me more. And it says he presented a theory after his interview, with Candace, where he somewhat accused Don of hiding in the shed. Door to shed was open. Candace wouldn't let him look inside. Tim says he apologized for that yesterday.
Sometimes the times aren't exactly bullseye that I'm saying, but they're generally in that area, that time frame, and it may consolidate a couple things a few hours apart, but the points were all still the same. And I want to clarify also, I have this massive, huge respect for law enforcement.
So he always wants to make it clear that he has a massive, huge respect for law enforcement. And I don't think that's suspicious at all. I think that's pretty normal thing for a human to say, that they have respect for law enforcement. I just think he's a little overdoing it, saying I have a huge, massive respect for law enforcement. And then the last time he says, I have respect for law enforcement maximum. It's like, okay, dude, we get it. But then he goes on to make it seem like, but I don't really have that much respect for Chris. That's just my opinion.
And listen, you can hear the frogs. They like when it floods.
He said, listen, you can hear the frogs. They like when it floods.
Nothing personally against the gentleman at all.
So he's saying he has nothing personally against Chris McDonough at all.
He's supposed to be suspicious. That was his job. You're suspicious. I mean, look at what he's probably about the only gentleman I'll bring up. I won't bring him up much. I have nothing against the man. I want to make that clear. Himself.
He's saying you're supposed to be suspicious because it's your job, because he's saying that his job is an investigator. So he's supposed to be suspicious because he's an investigator. But at the same time, he's calling him an ex-law enforcement, ex-investigator. But he's saying he's still in that mindset of doing his job. So you think you'd have a little bit more appreciation for him. And he does do the Cold Case Foundation, which I have a lot of respect for him for that.
Probably a neat guy. Probably the kind of guy that loves just, what's up? Hang with. It was just.
I doubt he'd want to, what's up, hang with you.
The learning curve was painful. I'm going to just leave it at that. And some of the disagreements on how to use the internet and how it shouldn't be used.
And then he starts talking about the learning curve again. He's always going back to this learning curve, and I can't really understand that, because what that would be your opinion. So how am I going to know what your learning curve is compared to my learning curve?
And the damage it can cause people when it,
This text says, and Candace just now replied, she said she's scared for her life. People threatening, and police won't intervene unless the threats become active. Like, once someone actually tries to kill them, then they come after they're dead, I guess. I don't know who texted that, but that's alarming.
when it's just basically built on suspicion and talk and I saw this or this happened, and we understand all that. Most of us learned that in first grade, about don't gossip, don't tell a story. Matter of fact, in first grade, my first grade teacher had us sit in a little circle.
Another thing a lot of people learn in first grade is a lot of the stuff you were showing in your first couple journey videos.
She told a secret to one, and they told it to the next one. And she said, "Okay, just pass it around." And when it got back to the end person, they told the secret, and it was nothing like what the teacher had told the first.
Yeah, D presents. I hope you don't care that he gave you a wrench. I just love you, but he said, and it's an honor for me to have you as a wrench in my chat. But anyways, if you're not subbed up to D Presents, she does a lot for Summer Moon Utah Wells. Please check her out. She's awesome. And part of me likes Chris, and part of me, I don't want to say part of me doesn't like Chris McDonough, but part of me is irritated with Chris McDonough because I feel like he somewhat exploits Barry and Jeannie, and that's just my opinion. I know they're grown women and they can make their own decision, and I know a lot of people don't like that. I have that opinion probably, but it is my opinion, and I think that he does exploit them a little bit because he knows what they're probably going through and the trauma that they've went through, and he's using that to get like thousands and thousands of views, and he's getting tons and tons of super chats and everything in the process of this, and what are they getting out of it? You know what I'm saying? That's all.
The first one. Hey, bud, how you doing? So I mean that's just what happens, and it just magnifies on YouTube.
But yeah, what Chris McDonough did for Summer is invaluable. Definitely.
So just make that clear right there. There is no war between Tim and the gentleman there who we discussed in a previous video.
So there's no war between Chris McDonough and Tim Mullen, just to make that clear. Not that anybody thought there was until he started saying, to make it clear that there's not. Oh, that's the end of that one. Sorry if there's a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure why that is. I thought it might be because my volume was turned up too high, but I have it turned down so low that I can barely hear it, and apparently there's still a little bit of an echo. Tim then goes on to say investigators have to be suspicious because it's part of the job. He has investigators in his family, he says, so he would know, apparently. I'm assuming he's still talking about Chris McDonough, which it's pretty obvious that he is, but he kind of leaves it open a little bit. He does that a lot. He says he himself is just a standard basic guy, a much more boring guy than people think. This is why people have court-appointed attorneys, not YouTubers on their defense, I'm assuming he means, saying it's not his job to dissect the family. I don't think the family was ever trying to use Chris McDonough as an attorney, and I don't understand what you mean by that or how you threw that in there. But your job is not to dissect the family. Okay. He was just a family-asked media guy to work with news agencies and stuff like Dr. Phil, he says. I wonder what his role was there with Dr. Phil exactly. He says this is showbiz, not for Summer, he says, for the media. That's pretty harsh. He's gone months and months with lack of sleep because he is allegedly so close to the situation. He says he can't talk about Summer a lot because he has to distance himself because it's too intimate into the emotions. Too tender. When he sees the desperation in the parents thinking there is someone who has her, he could tell they want Summer back. They think that got a lead on someone. They think they get a lead on someone, then find out there's nothing, and they're so let down, according to Tim. Man, I wish I could get a specific example on that. Does he mean rumors they hear on YouTube or things they are communicating with law enforcement? Because he kind of leaves that open too, to make it sound like they're communicating with law enforcement about potential leads of someone that could have Summer, in my opinion. Stop.
I was just kind of like a family asked appointed media guy.
Now this says, what is a court-appointed attorney? If you've been arrested and can't afford to hire a private criminal defense attorney, the court will assign an attorney to handle your case. These lawyers work in the public defender's office and are mandated to defend anyone who has been charged with a crime and is not financially able to employ counsel. Sorry, I'm going to let my husband get out of here. I know that background noise is loud. Thanks, Tim. I'm pretty sure we all know what court-appointed attorneys are, but thank you. And this is apparently for the family and to know this is what a court-appointed attorney is.
Guy.
Because he's making this for the family, right?
To work with news agencies and stuff like Dr. Phil and, you know. I mean,
so he's saying he's just that appointed by the family to work with news agencies and stuff like Dr. Phil.
And there's some we said no to.
And there's some we said no to, he says. There's some we said no to. So again, with the we. So he makes that confusing because he says, so no, around here we say we sometimes when we mean I. And okay, so how do I ever know if you're saying we or I? Why don't you just say I? Because this is kind of a big deal, and you should make sure that you're very clear on everything that you're saying because we're talking about a missing 6-year-old.
This is showbiz. This whole thing is showbiz for the industry, not for Summer. Summer, Moon, Utah, Wells.
This is showbiz for the news and entertainment industries, but not for Summer, Moon, Utah, Wells. Just for the showbiz, for the news and the entertainment industries. Well, what news and entertainment industries are you talking about? And why would you turn them down? And when you say we, are you talking about we as in you, Don, and Candace all together turned them down? Or do you mean we as in I, as in you just turned them down yourself and Don and Candace didn't even know?
You notice I'm not bringing that up too much because it's too tender.
He's not bringing up Summer too much because it's too tender, he says.
Can't.
Well, then maybe you should consider a different job.
Just throw her name up and out.
It's not just throwing her name up and out.
When I'm talking about this more generic stuff that happened.
Do you think I'm just throwing Summer's name out there? No. It is tender, but we have to talk about it. You have to say her name, Tim. You have to show her picture. You have to talk about her. You can't just pussyfoot around being a media manager. If you're going to be the media manager, you need to talk about her and say her name and show her face. I have a huge problem with that.
And because I've gone months and months and months, lack of sleep, a knot in the stomach. You feel sick. Some days you just don't have it. Some days you feel so down. I mean, how do you, when you're that close to the
generic
situation, it's not a game. You can't make it.
So he says, let's hear this again.
I've gone months and months and months, lack of sleep, a knot in the stomach. You feel sick. Some days you just don't have it.
Months and months and months, lack of sleep, knot in the stomach. Some days you just don't have it, he says, from doing this.
Some days you feel so down. I mean, how do you, when you're that close to the situation, it's not a game.
How close are you really to what situation exactly? I wish he would be a little bit more specific sometimes.
You can't make it a game and entertainment. So to those of us that are very close,
who's making it a game besides what Don and Candace have done to make it a literal game when they've played jokes on people during Summer's disappearance?
to it, that stuff naturally comes across pretty vile because we can't do
He
that.
says, those of us very close to it, the YouTube type entertainment using Summer hits us very vile. Let me say that again because that's confusing wording. Those of us very close to it, the YouTube type entertainment using Summer hits us very vile. Okay.
That we can't go that route and talk about we can't do it. It's too close. So you don't hear me.
So is what he's saying is we can't go that route, as in we can't talk about the, alleged sexual assault that's going on. Sorry, trigger warning. We can't talk about the alleged violence that goes on in the family because it's too close. Is that what he's saying?
At this point, mentioning the Summer, yeah, I'll say the little girl. Because I have to kind of keep it generic because it's too intimate into the emotions.
Yeah, he has to keep it generic because it's too intimate to the emotions. Yeah, well, it's a missing 6-year-old girl. Of course, that's a natural human reaction.
And when you've seen the parents, and you've seen the tears, the anguish.
So he's saying he's seen the anguish and the tears in Don and Candace.
The desperation when they think there's possibly somebody that may have her. They go wide open, all engines. And then the downer when it's not there.
Now listen to this one more time.
And when you've seen the parents, and you've seen the tears, the anguish. The desperation when they think there's possibly somebody that may have her. They go wide open, all in.
How do the parents think there's somebody that possibly may have her? When did that happen? Because I would love to have the specific example of that.
Engines. And then the downer when it's not there.
Because you're supposed to be the media manager for the family. Can you be careful with the background noise? But the media manager for the family should be a little bit more open and transparent. And if you're talking about all the rumors and drama, then that's not legit. And you're trying to make it sound like some secret information about stuff that they've been talking to law enforcement about, but you don't.
People don't do that if they know their little girl is dead. They do not do that if they know, oh, this happened.
Who are you really making this for, Tim? That's what I want to know.
No, they want that little girl. So maybe we'll get into that sometime. But I want to just kind of say that, though.
Dee, I believe this was recorded. It was recorded either in February or it had to have been in February because that's when he did all the other Journey videos. I'm pretty sure they all started in February 2022 because it started 2/22/22 at 2:22 a.m. is when he started the Journey videos.
They will not show the...
And I said that at like 2:22 mark.
Great tears and emotions that the YouTubers have been programmed to think is important.
Who is programming people to think things are important? And if those people are being programmed, then there's probably something going on in their heads. I don't think there's people actually out there trying to program people. I think there's just people that are trying to help. There's a lot of grifters, but I don't think there's actually people out there trying to program people to think a certain way about Don for some nefarious reason. I think it's more possible and likely that you're trying to program people to think that Don is this great person because you're covering for him for something. And that's my opinion.
And you have somebody brought it, whoever they were, and they programmed that cliche.
Again with the cliches. And this one is, I haven't seen any emotions from them. So apparently that's a cliche. Jeez. He goes on to talk about how YouTubers have created a cliche for Don and Candace, that we haven't seen any emotion from them. He says YouTubers are programmed to think a certain way about Don and Candace. Tim says the emotions never leave them, though, that they are there 24/7, every day, every week, every month. Let's see what you guys are saying. Yeah, after the Phil show, the only one I think would be Jody Sue. Yeah. Jody Sue. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get back going on Jody Sue because I'm still have a deep dark feeling about her. Hey, who said what? It's okay, baby. I had to work earlier too. So, every day, every week, every month, he says, the emotions never leave them. Tim says because of this, it's hard for him to say Summer's name. He says just watching the video today that Candace put up was just too much. He says he has to be careful because his emotions are very sensitive. He says you cannot put the pain, grief, and fear into words while playing a clip of images of Summer and her family. I actually like this part.
This is going to be short, probably not sweet.
He actually
yes, I'm
did
simple.
A good job on this part. He put Summer's family in there. He put her face in there. He added a little bit of background music to keep our attention.
I could make fancy videos, but I'm not.
You're not? Why not? It's for Summer. Make them fancy. It's for Summer. You're her media manager.
This doesn't have to be a production on what this is. A lot of this, I told somebody today, I said, don't think big imagination.
Summer is so cute.
Conspiracy theories when they're listening to these. It's just.
Don't think it's some big imagination conspiracy theory when you're listening to these, he says. Don't think that. He's programming us not to think that.
Think of like a teacher. And
he's programming us to think, in my opinion, he's programming us to think that he's just like a teacher, he says, because he just said it himself.
Talking to 3 boys and 1 little girl.
He's just like a teacher talking to 3 boys and 1 little girl.
Happen to have the last name Wells. And maybe they'll be teenagers when they watch it. Who knows? But
yeah, or maybe they'll see it before then because the internet is everywhere.
They're just hearing it raw and straight and learning some history about the area they're growing up in.
They probably already knew most of that, honestly, by the time they would see this, if you're thinking that they're not going to see it till they're like into their teenage years.
And just trying to make it a little more interesting that way. So,
I mean, that's cool and all if that's really what you're doing it for, I guess. But you need to fancy it up a little bit for Summer. I mean, you could take the time to do it for her. You can take the time to sit down and make the videos a little more interesting, put her face in there. You have to have it in you to do it if you're going to do it. You can't just halfway do it unless you're doing it for another reason.
You're not going to find secret hidden messages. Bones. Why did he point?
Did he just say bones? Pretty sure he did.
You're not going to find secret hidden messages. Bones.
Why would you say that?
Why did he point at the clock tower? It makes for good movies.
That picture of Summer right there, her head is so shaved. And he says, You're not going to find any crazy conspiracy theory stuff, but it makes for good movies, he says.
We're dealing with people who've all been raised on movies, and so we're all warped.
What do you mean by that? I wasn't raised on movies, and a lot of people that are in Summer's case weren't raised on movies, probably. That's a really random thing to say.
We always immediately recall that kind of thinking. Everything.
Guys, I'm trying to figure out if he's a suspect, okay?
Is every clue. Just remember, when they make a movie, it's a script that's been written, edited.
Just remember, when they make a movie, it's a script. It's been written, he says.
Modified storytelling.
Modified storytelling.
This isn't storytelling. This is reality.
So he's saying this isn't storytelling, this is reality, as if we didn't already know that, as if that's not already why we're here in the first place. Of course, this isn't storytelling, and this is reality, Tim. We know that. We don't need you to tell us that. And if this is definitely for the family, they don't need you to tell them that. It's obviously reality to them. So why are you saying that? Makes it seem kind of fishy to me. Sorry.
Lost girl.
Not sorry.
People trying to help. Very simple. And that's probably playing it too simple. Because I know.
That's probably playing it too simple, he says. As if he could be any simpler with it.
Investigators have to search clues.
Yeah, investigators have to search clues because it's their job. We just do it because we're morally obligated. And I'm sure those investigators are morally obligated as well.
But this one is about that week. So we had a bunch of things going on. Getting the website, pictures, Dawn and Candace wrestling with their own emotions of things, being very careful even to send me stuff. They just didn't know who to trust. They'd already pretty well lost trust completely.
So that he's saying they didn't know who to trust, they didn't know where to turn, they didn't know what to do. So thank goodness he was there for them, because then they had somewhere that they could go, and he could be somebody that they could trust. But why are you any different than any other YouTuber or anybody else? It's just you putting yourself on a pedestal. Like, how do you know that there's not other people out there that could do way better of a job? Why don't you pass the torch then to somebody else? Like, hey, this is a big deal, admit it, like, this was too much for me, if it was too much for you, and let somebody else do it.
By that point, at the end of July, pause button. So I've kind of got you pointing in the sun.
That's okay. I can look at the sunlight for a minute.
It goes that way all the way, maybe another mile. And that's where it starts. The furthest eastern point. It's gorgeous. It really is pretty down there. Great big.
I'm sure it is beautiful down there.
Big historical farm.
He's talking about the big historical farm that's down that way at the end.
Right now. I think I hit pause. Find a little better spot. Please stand by.
Oh my goodness. Please stand by. Again, he has to find a better spot, but he's still like in the same spot.
3, 2, 1.
See, he had to find a better spot. I guess that's a little bit better. You could see down the side of the, hill a little bit there. It'd be cool if I seen like a bobcat coming up like, ah. I'm stupid. Don't mind me.
Before this trail was here, this was my stomping ground. Used to run these cliffs.
So he's saying before this trails was here, this was my stomping grounds, he says. Okay.
You had the big creek down here. This was big farm. Somewhere right over in here on the other side of the creek, I think it was all cattle.
We don't want to see you wiggling your finger.
We were over there once, and they decided that we were a good target, and that whole herd came charging.
Can you imagine that? That's actually a funny story. He says he was over climbing some fence over there, and there was this whole herd of cattle that came charging him, and they had to like hurry up and go jump a fence to get away from them. That is kind of funny. Sorry.
Drive over that barbed wire fence as fast as you can.
I'm just picturing Tim Mullen like running as fast as he can from a herd of cows and trying to jump a barbed wire fence, and for some reason it made me giggle.
Only wild animals.
Probably because I'm picturing him like ripping his pants and falling.
Well, I saw down here was a bobcat back when we were young. No raccoons, no turkeys, no deer. Somehow they've been scattered. Because this was out in the country, but
oh my gosh.
I don't know where all the critters.
He's just talking about all the animals that he didn't see, but now all the animals that he does see.
Is gone, but now this area is stocked up. Lots of deer.
Yep. It's all stocked up now. Lots of deer. Then Tim continues with talking about the animals he had seen around the area where he is walking. He says he has seen bobcats, bears, coyotes, lots and lots of deer, coons, and cattle. He says, so we had the little prayer vigil. Then pictures and things for the website. A lot of back and forth between Don and Candace. Robin was still the go-between because I hadn't spoken to them yet. He says he might have sent Don a private message on Facebook, but he didn't hear back. He says the only person they probably trusted at this point was Robin. He says EquiSearch also, I think, was brought in. Okay. Candace was so burnt out at the time that it didn't even faze her that they were there, he says. Candace was so distracted, apparently, that she forgot to thank EquiSearch. He tells how Candace thanked them, and they posted it on the website, if he recalls correctly. Candace says, we want to give a big thank you for all the EquiSearch people that came all the way back to help us find Summer in a Facebook post to EquiSearch. There was a little more to it than that, but that's all you could see on the video that Tim posted of it. But she just posted on EquiSearch's Facebook and said thank you to them. And then Tim took a screenshot or whatever of that and posted it on the Find Summer Wells page. He says the second prayer vigil came on a Tuesday, and if he recalls, Robin was to leave for vacation the next day. Of course, he would know that, with her family to take a break from everything. He said her husband was really helping her there and was like, shut it all down. Just take the beach, or just the beach with the family. Very healthy, he says. He says once again he was promoting the vigil on the news site. That's why he was taking all the pictures for Kingsport Free Media. He says he is always at events taking pictures. He says you go to kingsport.me or find it on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or not at all if you're not interested in Kingsport. He always makes sure we know he is always taking pictures for his news site, and that is why we always see him with a camera. Okay, cool. Tim goes on about what events have occurred so far in his timeline of meeting Don Wells, which this kind of doesn't make sense to me, but he says he lists them off one by one. It says, meeting Don Wells at Second Prayer Vigil, August 3rd, 2021. Number 1, promote prayer vigil on website and news site. Number 2, hope to meet Don Wells if he was there. Number 3, praying with the group for Summer Moon Utah Wells. Okay. He says the key component to all this is those who have been praying. He says God knows what happened. God doesn't get confused. He has a reason and order. He says people that know that God is real give him power, and those that don't stagnate him. He says we are the impatient ones. God is patient. He goes on to talk about the group of people at the prayer vigil being a very unique piece to him. Hardly anybody there even knew Summer, he says. People with a heart. How does he know that? people with a heart and a desire to pray and help. He says there's probably no greater help. It says he says it takes people like the police to observe and in the timing of how things work out. I don't understand what he means by that. He said God knows, so why doesn't he just tell? Well, God is a million miles past how our brains can think, he explains. So, he says he took a picture of Don on accident. He said Don was just standing there by himself. He says, maybe I have too much compassion, but I went and stood by him. I didn't know the atmosphere that would come from Don, he said. He says when it's two dudes, you tend to be a little more distant, so I was being respectful of that. He says dudes like their distance. He says it was like with Candace, there was not evil around him. He said you could tell he was a shattered man. Don was there, but uncomfortable to be there. Don then begins to speak in a clip at the prayer vigil.
He's a man, shattered, you could tell. There, but uncomfortable to be there. I could tell he was, this wasn't really the things that he was as comfortable with. But
he could tell somehow that this was not one of the something that he would be comfortable with. Well, I mean, would anybody really be comfortable there?
Just trying.
I want to thank you all.
And if your child was missing, would you be comfortable at a prayer vigil? That's not somewhere you go to be comfortable, in my opinion.
I just pray. I hope you all.
I would hope people would make you to feel comfortable, but you wouldn't just go there being comfortable.
Send our prayers because we are. I'm really under attack right now, big time. Satan. I mean, I feel like Satan took my baby.
Dudes like their distance.
I feel like I was getting close. Satan owned me years ago, and
he says Satan owned me years ago.
I've turned my heart to God and been trying to change my life. It's like Satan's had me under attack.
Amen.
So many ways.
So Satan's had Don under attack in so many ways, he says. I wonder what those ways are.
Now, I believe he's got my baby. Of course, he's responsible for all evilness. So, of course,
he's responsible for all evilness, he says.
It's him. And I feel totally lost without my daughter.
I bet he does feel totally lost without his daughter, no matter what his role in her disappearance may or may not be.
She loved me unconditionally. She loved me more than nobody has.
Can you imagine if Don really did do something to his daughter? How he must be feeling around all these people, that pressure he must be feeling, and like he really would be showing this real raw emotion, but he wouldn't be able to say why. So of course Tim's going to see real raw emotion regardless, one way or the other. There's going to be real raw emotion there.
Has loved me like my daughter has, except for God himself. And so I'm really lost. And now all these people are attacking, and I don't understand that.
Yeah, Lestiana, I agree.
In my deepest, darkest moment, everybody, not everybody, but people are attacking us.
So he's saying in his deepest, darkest moment, they're being attacked, which is really, that's crazy because that's like the exact same thing that Tim's saying is happening.
It's real tough.
He's like using his words verbatim, like he's trying to totally get his foot in the door and like he's trying to cover for Don.
Thank you for your prayers and everything. And
like he thinks by trying to make Don look like a good guy, he's going to get further with him, maybe.
Just pray that God will bring someone back. That would answer a lot of questions.
I'm just praying that Tim is actually some cop that has all this intel and information and he's going to solve the case. Wouldn't that be nuts? No, I'm just joking. That would be awesome if that was really the case, but I don't really think that.
Help us. I mean, I feel like I'm on the edge of ruin right now because of the things people are saying. But anyways, I don't know.
Yeah, Luciana. Of course, the child loves a parent unconditionally. They look for them for structures, stability, for safety, for guidance, for leaders, for love. A child always loves their parents unconditionally. Exactly.
Thank you.
Just ignore it. That's what I had to do. Yeah. I have to obey God. So yeah.
Oh my goodness, you guys. So they're just gonna go up and they're gonna tell them all what they think.
Even though people are coming against you, bad things are being said about you.
Don seems extremely uncomfortable, as would I.
You don't have to worry about any of that. Right.
But probably for totally different reasons.
You know the truth. God knows the truth.
Right.
You are the day of judgment when you
Do I hear a flute?
stand before Jesus.
Yeah.
None of these people that are saying
Dotson's there playing in the background.
whatever they're saying, they're going to be standing there holding your hand saying, no, it wasn't him, it was me. It's not going to happen like that. So, and I know it's easier said than done because it hurts.
Yeah, it is.
But just remember, the only one that you need to please.
This is like uncomfortable to watch because Don is so uncomfortable that it's like uncomfortable to watch him be so uncomfortable.
Is Jesus.
Amen.
The answer to is
I
Jesus.
understand that. It's hard to see that.
Easier. It's easier said than
Right,
done.
absolutely.
Because the closer you get to God, the more the devil's going to try to attack you.
I appreciate that. I do.
But I just have to wait and
I have to skip it a little bit because my computer's starting to die.
in that. And I hope everybody receives the message in that. But definitely keep going forward, keep moving forward.
She's just trying to be a good person and give Don a message and say, like, you know, God is going to be here for you in your darkest moments. Just keep trying to push forward and keep trying to do the right thing, basically.
Not to let what other people say, regardless of what it is, get to you, because it's together you're doing this. When you're a child of God, you can just talk into God.
I thought I was really strong at one point. This has been one.
So basically, Don's saying at one point he thought he was really strong, but he's like totally being broken down now.
The hardest.
It's been real tough. Satan's trying to push.
Which I can imagine because I feel like I think having guilty knowledge would really suck.
In every way.
He's real good at that, unfortunately, but God is greater and God is bigger and God is stronger. Just remember that.
Okay, now I have to obey God. I feel like we should get.
Why don't we get that
Tim's gonna make sure he stays right by Don.
family and let's just pray for them. Okay.
And the devil's trying to attack anyway. But God
I'm sure Candace is probably just as uncomfortable as Don.
is in control of this. Whether we don't see it or not, there's a song been singing called Waymaker.
She's kind of looking at that camera like, can you get that thing off of me, please?
And it's just a powerful song. Even when we don't, I just pray. For this day, Father, Lord, Father, God.
You see, Tim, he's got to make sure he's right there because he knows somebody's filming and he wants to make sure he's being filmed. In my opinion, he wants to make sure he's being filmed and seen with Don and Candace there.
Yes. Come together in one accord.
So the emotions are too intimate and too real and too raw for him to be able to say Summer's name during a broadcast that's supposedly for her family during her disappearance, but he's going to attend this vigil and he's totally got it in him to stand here during this. And this isn't too intimate?
Yes.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the dark.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy it, guys.
He said,
I don't buy what he's selling.
Unfortunately, we have to meet some property detectives.
okay.
Don's saying, he's like, we got to get out of here. He's like, unfortunately, we got to meet some private detectives at 7, so we got to go. So I'm wondering if, because Tim said he was trying to give him a reason to go and trying to help him get out of there, basically, allegedly. So if Tim allegedly was trying to give them a reason to get out of there, then why would they say, we have to meet some private detectives? So was he just lying when he said that? Because did Tim tell him to say that just to get him out of there?
We don't want to leave out on y'all. We want to stay here and be with y'all.
I know, Candace has. But you guys do what you need to do.
Yes.
Do what you need to do. Definitely. Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Even if you're not here, we're still gonna be with you in spirit. So we'll be with you.
No, go do what you have to
And
do.
just like I was telling you, and just like she's telling you, yeah, you can't listen. Yep. Don't let nobody bring you down.
And now this woman's going to try and be a good human and talk to Candace and tell her, don't you let nobody bring you down, because she's just trying to be a good person, and she's probably like really in the heat of the moment because she's had a prayer vigil for summer, and she probably just wants to give something. She's feeling like she needs to help. She's probably a mother herself.
Yep. Nobody's walking your shoes to have the right to say what you have done, not done, or how you're feeling. Easier said than done. But
I feel like Candace wants to say so much that she's just afraid to.
I stand strong.
Tell you,
Love you.
truly, Jesus loves you. And if we didn't love you, we wouldn't be here every week.
Now Candace is crying too.
So I always come on our Facebook page, T Stories.
Mm-hmm. So that was interesting, right? Yeah. So Tim goes on to say that Don was just cordial, extremely cordial with everybody. He says a lady came with a a cake and a teddy bear. He photographed that because it was a perfect moment of kindness. He said Don wasn't hard or crusty. He was extremely respectful. Says he had manners and was a gentleman. Of course, Don is going to be on his best behavior at his missing daughter's prayer vigil, Tim. I would hope so. I don't think anyone has a problem with Don not having manners. I think people have a problem with the way he lets his family live, but that's just my opinion. He said he has taken pictures and posted them on Facebook as media manager Wells. He wanted to help catch the tenderness of the whole situation. In my opinion, he wanted it to be an in with the family so he could get some footage nobody else could get, and if he could persuade them only to use him as a media source. After all, people ended up having to sign non-disclosure agreements to visit the wells after so long. He says quite a few people were surrounding Don at the vigil, and he could tell he wanted to go, so he tried to help him out of there. He says he tried to just help get things rolling that way, meaning to help him gather his things and help him leave. He says then they just hopped in their car, talking about Don and Candace. He says he introduced himself quietly to Don as, "Hello, I'm Tim Mullen. I'm the one that does the website for you." And he says Don said a really nice thank you. He said there was a couple things back and forth when there was people standing around, but mostly not. He said he wasn't trying. Okay, so you guys weren't really talking. He said he wasn't trying to tread in too far. He says Don was just happy there was another man there acting like a buddy, acting like a friend. He says, I didn't know anything about any of his friends or not friends at all. He basically says they left and he didn't know if he would see them again or what. There they go, he says. He says it ended like the other prayer vigil with flyers being handed out, which I'm sure was all Robin. That's great. He says at least he met Don and shook his hand. Had a touch of conversation. He can't remember if he said anything to Candace or not. He may have greeted her. August 3rd, 2021 is when Tim met Don Wells for the first time, allegedly.
I didn't know about his friends or not friends or any of that at all.
I didn't know about his friends or not friends or any of that at all, he says. Who did you know about then?
But he left, and I didn't know if I would, there they go. And that pretty well ended, I think, maybe like the other prayer thing. There was some flyers being given.
Yeah, I truly believe any parent that has a missing child would not be defiant in the way that they are, and they would be not partying, and they would not be playing jokes on the phone. They're not looking. Listiana Sims. Yeah, I agree.
Out and passed out and other little things like that going on, but at least I'd met them. At least I shook his hand. We'd had a touch.
He says, but at least I'd met them. At least I shook his hand. So he was trying to seek Don out.
A conversation. And then
so I think he had this whole idea all along that he pretends like he just had in the very far off of his mind for the website.
I don't remember if I'd said anything to Candace or not on that. I'm sure I greeted her at some point.
So he can't remember if he said anything to Candace or not yet at this point.
So I believe we can say August 3, 2021 is when I met Don Wells.
It either is or it isn't the day that you met Don Wells. I don't think we all need to agree. You just tell us, is that really the day you met Don, August 3rd, 2021?
For the first time. The daddy of the missing girl, Summer Moon Utah Wells. He was with his wife.
So, yeah, Summer's daddy, he was with his wife. We all know that.
They got in their car and they...
And you're telling this to who? The family?
They drove away.
See, it just doesn't make sense that he's making this for the family. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. It bothers me that as the media manager for a missing 6-year-old girl who was 5 at the time, he made these videos. He doesn't place Summer's name and picture more throughout his journey videos. He, in my opinion, should start and end with Summer's information and photo. He should read off her name, age, height, weight, hair color, eye color, etc. Like this. Summer Moon Utah Wells was 5 years old at the time of her disappearance. She is now 6 to turn 7 February 4th. She had a shaved head at the time of her disappearance and has naturally blonde hair. She could have easily been mistaken for a boy with her shaved head. She was approximately 3 feet tall and 40 pounds and is likely closer to 4 feet tall and likely over 40 pounds by now. Summer had a front tooth nearly rotted out on her front right side. She was last seen wearing a pink shirt and gray pants and was possibly barefoot. She was reported missing June 15th of 2021 around 6:30 p.m. over a year and a half ago. If you have any tips or information regarding Summer's whereabouts, call 1-800-TBI FIND immediately. Summer Moon Utah Wells is said to love animals, French fries, Tic Tacs, the song Godzilla in My House, and loves to run, dance, and twirl. Summer allegedly loved to be like Elsa and be a princess. She also enjoyed dirt and playing with her brothers. Summer loved to be outside and play. Summer loved to play on her swing and to play in the water. There is still an active Amber Alert for 6-year-old Summer Moon Utah Wells. Please give all tips to 1-800-TBI FIND. The circumstances leading up to Summer's disappearance are unknown. This could have been an accident cover-up, a kidnapping, a sale, or something different. At this point, we just do not know. Please do not give up on Summer. Keep her face and name out there and do not let suspects sit silently. May justice come for Summer Moon Utah Wells and may she be found safe and soon. And that's all I have on Tim Mullen for tonight. Can you stop? That's okay. My my computer's about to die soon, and luckily that was like the perfect timing for me to end this. But that was all I had on Tim Mullen's Journey 7. I've got Journey 8 to do tomorrow, and I also wanted to remind everybody about now there could have been updates since I last knew about Madalena Kojokari. She's missing from North Carolina. And Madalena Kojokari, 11 years old, was reported missing to her school December 15th of 2022. Madalena was last seen November 23rd, 2022 at her home in Cornelius, North Carolina. Her parents waited 3 weeks to report her missing to the school resource officer at Bailey Middle School, where she attends. She was last seen wearing jeans, pink, purple, and white Adidas shoes, and a white t-shirt and jacket. If you have any information regarding Madalena Kojokari, call the Cornelius Police Department at 704-892-7773. You can also submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. Madalena is a white female weighing approximately 90 pounds. Her last day of school was November 22nd. It's unclear if there was a delay in Madalena being reported missing to the school, according to a local news station. Sure seems to me like there was, because they didn't report her missing for 3 weeks. Unless they were supposed to be on break that whole time, I don't see how there could have been a delay in her being reported missing. Police say the parents alerted the school resource officer and say they do not think she's a runaway. They encourage people to share her image and name and information and to call them at the Cornelius Police Department with any information you feel is in connection to the case that may help solve it. I do not believe she's a runaway personally because I feel the parents would have reported her missing sooner. I am wondering if the school reported to the police or the parents reported to the police. It sounds like the parents only called the school because there has been no mention of when the parents called police. FBI, SBI, and the Cornelius Police Department searched. Yes, and both parents are now arrested. The home where Madalena disappeared. WCCB News showed footage of investigators walking away from Madalena's home with shovels. As the reporter explains, they've been digging in the backyard. So they are digging in the backyard of Madalena's house. And they are also searching for evidence inside the home. Their neighbor says the neighborhood is baffled by her disappearance and says she hopes they figure out what happened to her and that she's okay. When WCCB asked police if they found anything in the search, they replied that they're still searching for Madalena. Police didn't comment on why it took so long for her to be reported missing. On December 17th, Cornelia police arrested Christopher Palmiter, the stepdad to Madalena, for failure to report the disappearance of a child. Christopher Palmiter is 60 years old and currently being held at the Mecklenburg County Detention Center on a $100,000 bond. That is a press release from today, December 17th. Madalena's mother lived with her and her stepdad, as far as I know, and did not report her missing either. So unless somehow she was away at work or with family or at school or something and didn't know, but it's an ongoing investigation. So I guess we'll see, but I don't understand how the mother is not arrested as well. If I find anything else out, I'll come back and let you know. Please pray for Madalena Kojokari. Here's her picture. Missing person, November 23rd, 2022, Cornelius, North Carolina, Madalena Kojokari. Description, brown hair, 4'10", female, about 90 pounds. She is white. She's got really long, dark hair. She was last seen at home in Cornelius, North Carolina on the evening of November 23rd, 2022, and has not been seen since. She was reported missing to her school December 15th, 2022. Madalena was last seen wearing jeans, pink and purple and white Adidas shoes, and a white t-shirt and jacket. If you have any information concerning the whereabouts of Madalena Kojakari, please contact the Cornelius Police Department at 704-892-7773. You may also contact your local FBI office, the nearest American embassy or consulate, or you can submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. And that's from the field office in Charlotte, North Carolina. Madalena Kojakari, just reported missing 2 days ago when her parents called the school and said that she was missing. I'm assuming the school then called authorities, because otherwise we would be hearing when the parents called authorities, not when they called the school only. So I'm assuming that the school then contacted authorities, and that then authorities started the search, and something happened and they arrested the stepdad. I don't know what exactly that was, but they've arrested the stepdad on failure to report her missing, but they have not arrested the mom. So maybe something happened to where they have some kind of evidence that they can't reveal yet. I don't know. We'll see. This is Madalena Kojakari. Please pray for her that she'll be found safe, and please keep your eye out for updates and share this out if you're able to. Thank you. I hope everybody has a lovely day.